and I'm on a mission to connect with every creative writer in the world. And I need your help. The world is constantly changing, which is why it's our duty, no, it's our responsibility to inspire creativity. My creative writing tips, tricks, and strategies are gonna help you become a better writer, so that way you can beat procrastination. Join me on this journey to unite the creative writing industry. And let's inspire creativity in the world together. What does creative writing mean to you? Welcome to Kauffman Writes, your daily stream for creative writing information, inspiration, motivation, discussion, strategy, advice, and maybe a little bit of procrastination. But don't worry, I won't tell anyone. I'm Kauffman, and I'd like to welcome you to World Building Wednesdays. And I am so excited as I love diving into developing unique and fun worlds. Now, if you've joined us on the previous World Building Wednesdays, we've gone through 3 workshops already. There we go. 3 workshops already where we dug into different elements of world building. So today we're going to recap just a couple of things we touched on from the previous workshops, and then we'll hop into what are some real world examples for practical worlds that we've enjoyed and why do they work. And then we'll hop into our daily writing sprint, and that's the stream. That's the way the cookie crumbles. So that's what we got for today. And by the way, if you're watching this on the replay, don't worry, I got you covered. When the stream ends, I will be adding time codes to the stream, so that way you can hop to the point of the video that brings you the most value. All right. So world building recap. What do we got for today? So let me pull up. All right, there we go. So when I went over the previous World Building Wednesdays, what were some of the areas that I touched upon? So for previous Wednesdays, we actually, I want to say that I touched on thinking about setting and events as it pertains to building your world. We touched on technique. What are different elements when we go into creating our own worlds? Then in the second workshop, we talk about having a goal. What is a step-by-step method when you're like setting up the context for the world that you want to create? We then went into, I talked about drafting, and then in workshop number 3, we actually had we came up with some fun coffee shop world last week with some of our community. So that was fun. We did a little bit of a world building exercise, touched upon different elements of world building, and that was definitely a fun little stream for sure. So as I hop into today, world building examples, dollar signs. So as we hop into today, I started asking myself, I'm like, what are things that we are going to do to work on world building today? So I wanted to think about what are some popular world building examples? What are pieces of media or stories that we've seen, that you've seen, that really resonate with you as a writer? So I would say for me, some of my favorite worlds would probably be, I would say it'd probably be a mix of Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones are some fantasy-esque worlds. I would say V for Vendetta is one of my favorite stories. But let me think about fantasy-type worlds. Of course, the Star Wars universe is so vast when we think about science fiction. Let's see. Popular worlds. I would say Dune is probably a more notable example since the second movie just came out. That would actually probably be an interesting world to touch on, actually, because Dune has a very unique universe, especially if you've seen the part 2, the part 1, or you've read the book, or you saw the previous iterations of the movie. The Marvel universe is such an expansive universe because each story furthers the overall world, and then they bring it all together in each of their Marvel events. So there's definitely a number of different examples. So let me pull up here. So a couple of different popular universes. Let's see. Dune was one that came to mind. Marvel universe is one that came to mind. Now, of course, there's so many different components to the Marvel universe that you can pick apart the different types of worlds in the multiverse for a while. We have the Star Wars universe is another very popular one. Like I said, one of my favorites, which we'll be getting the what's it called? The House of the Dragons will be coming back soon. Game of Thrones is one of my favorites. Let me think. I'm thinking of some more like good broad examples. Let's see. What are some popular fiction worlds of 2023? Yeah, I was seeing if there was anything that really stood out, but I don't think there was any real like huge mega universes from big like notable franchises. So I would say the one that's most predominantly on my mind is probably Dune, since that's something that I've seen most recently. So when we think of something like Dune, right, which is a world, which is a universe full of the world of Dune is basically a sand universe. Now, I'll admit I'm not as familiar with the book lore and the book mythology of the world. I can only speak to what the movies have set up. But definitely feel free to join the discussion if you would like to, if you have more knowledge about Dune itself. So when I think about the movies, why does, and let me put here, we'll just put the cinematic universe. So when we think about the movie, how did it do a good job of building up this world between the first and the second part? So what are specific to the world? We have beyond that it's everything is covered in sand, right? Beyond the physical, that's the easy one, right? Everything is covered in sand. It's essentially a giant desert. Essentially a giant desert. So we're thinking of that just like a pure like visual, right? And then what are the types of societies? We have the I would say like kind of like the royal family, which is the group, the royal family that precedes over this specific world. And then we also have the higher ruling family of the overall universe, right? The higher ruling family. So, but then we also have, right, the sand people, right, which is like the nomadic tribes who've learned how to rule and balance with the desert life. So then we have the, let's see, I would say we have the nomadic sand people. Now, let me break this down. So I would say we have the locations, which is great. Everything is covered in sand. We have societies slash tribes. You can call us tribes slash groups, however you want to name this. We have the royal family, proceeds over the specific world. We have the higher ruling family, and then we have the nomadic sand people. So there's just a couple to give some precedence. Now, what else? We also have a belief system. Actually, we have the resource, right? We have a need for a specific resource. So limited resources. And I forgot what the resource was called, but there's that specific limited resource that the family controls, which they need for all their technology and things to get around on the planet. So there's a limited resource. There's also two different beliefs. Hence another reason, right? We have beliefs that are not exaggerated, that are personified. Our main hero, the one whose family gets killed off and then he has to come back and he has to learn how to be a sand person. So we have contrasting beliefs that if you're not part of that like royal high lineage, you're nothing. This is actually a very common one. Whereas the sand people are all about being one and using the planet to its to maximize. Let's see, contrasting beliefs, royal blood, royal through a bloodline, versus I would say the nomadic sand people would probably be through a strength, through, let's say like strength through not necessarily culture, strength through perseverance. So we have two very contrasting beliefs, and that's just touching upon Dune, right? And I'm sure, like, if I was as familiar with the book of Dune itself, there's so much more to dive into there. But when I'm pulling back and I'm looking from just the movie as a whole, and I really want to give you ideas, right? As you're working on your own stories, what are things that you can do that you can bring into your own storytelling? And these are just a couple of examples, right? Let's see, Dune, I have 4 specific examples, right? The locations, the societies, limited resources, and contrasting beliefs are all specific, clear examples that help develop the overall world of Dune. Now, let me go into something I'm a little more familiar with. As much as I like Game of Thrones, I know it's not as predominant right now until House of Dragons comes back. So I would say which one's a little bit more predominant between Marvel and Star Wars. They're probably both equally have kind of been gone through a roller coaster with what Disney has done. Let's do Star Wars for a second because Dune was fantasy, so we'll touch upon Star Wars. Let's do a little sci-fi. So, what are some things that make the Star Wars universe, right? That make it feel and make us know that the Star Wars universe is a unique universe beyond the multiple movies and all the franchises. But what are specific things that know that when we're in a Star Wars movie, TV show, or book, that we're in the Star Wars universe and not in some other space opera? Let's see. So, of course, the ideologies, not ideologies, the factions, of course, the main factions of Jedi versus Sith, right? Or versus the dark side. So we have 2 factions, Jedi versus Sith, right? Now, factions once again goes into society, tribe, group, factions. Two opposing groups, right? We're going to call them factions, Jedi versus Sith. Of course, there's other factions throughout the universe. There are many other tribes, cultures, but the predominant overarching factions is the Jedi with their generally lighter colored lightsabers and belief in the Force, and everyone has the Force, whereas the Sith is about taking power for it yourself. Look at that. What's that? Do I hear competing ideologies? Oh, look at that. So we have competing ideologies, let's say competing belief systems. We could even say contrasting, right? We saw a similar thing with Dune, right? Where Dune was about being born through a bloodline versus persevering through strength. The Jedi and the Sith is competing belief systems, where it's being one with, I would say, being one with the world around you, I'd say being one with the universe, because the Force is in every living being, and those who are more Force sensitive learn how to hone the Force, which is in every living being, right? Being one with the universe to gain balance versus taking power for yourself for personal gain, right? And if I were to boil this down deeper, it's helping everyone, helping others, versus helping oneself, right? And when we think about ideologies, those are things that people can relate with, right? Those are like core beliefs that anybody can relate with. Anybody can relate to a time of like, oh, there was a time where either I helped somebody else or there's a time where I saw somebody helping somebody else. That's a very like core, easy human thing. There's also times where I've wanted to help only myself and times where I've seen other people help themselves, right? And then that's personified through these opposing forces who their ideas are very, very clear, right? And then let's talk about tools, right? So what are tools that bring tools that are unique to this universe? Tools unique to this universe. Lightsabers, right? No one will ever be able to think of basically an energy sword, a lightsaber. Nobody will ever think of an energy sword without thinking of Star Wars, right? So lightsabers, the Force, right? Which, if we think about the Force as an idea is actually used in a lot of religions in the real world, right? As in understanding and being one with the world and going deeper into a belief system, right? With Hinduism, Buddhism. There's a lot of there's parallels between this fictitious and the real world, which is interesting. So, what are other tools unique to this universe? Let me think. There are, say, the Death Star, isn't it? Is a unique tool. The Death Star, which Death Star can also technically serve as a location. I forgot what the battleships are called, but the design of the battleships, the design of those cruisers, is unique. Cruisers. What's that one sport? Pod racing is unique. Yeah, that's a couple of tools. Let's see. What are some other things that make the Star Wars universe unique? You can always go into characters, right? But I generally try to leave the characters out of the world building because characters will help further develop a world. Absolutely. Characters and character building really goes into its own category, right? We of course wouldn't know the Star Wars universe without Yoda, without Luke, without Darth Vader, of course. But does the Star Wars universe still exist without those characters? Of course. Those characters, Yoda, they just help to elevate the things that are already working in the universe. So let's see. What are other things that work? Oh, let's look at political systems. Every universe has a political system, right? So we have the Empire versus the Rebel Alliance. Because who hasn't resonated with that or seen that at some point throughout our history, right? Basically, a dictatorship versus those who are oppressed and trying to work together to help those who are unable to defend themselves, right? A very core political system. And you see, even though it's this grand empire versus this rebel alliance, once again, it is either relatable or it is it's something that we've seen throughout history, either relatable or something seen throughout history. So if you're here in the stream, have you are you seeing a what's that, a common trend, right, from where we touched upon that was 3, where we touched upon Dune, right? So we saw a trend in Dune, and now I'm seeing a trend in Star Wars. So let's continue on to another universe, And I want you to tell me, let me actually pose this as a question, because this is a good question. Can you tell what is the one common trend for world building that is the same across these different universes? Perfect. So I'm going to throw that up there. I will also throw it up in the chat as well. Awesome. Can you tell what the trend is between these universes? So I would love to hear from you. So between hopping to Dune and then hopping to Star Wars, can you tell what is the one thing that is in common in the creation of these universes when we think of things like the factions, competing belief systems, tools, politics, religious beliefs, right? Locations. There's a common trend, and it's super easy, and it's probably something you might be aware of already. So let's hop into another one. So let's go into I do love me some Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones or Marvel? That's the question. Let me think. So we've done a fantasy and we've done a sci-fi. I'm like, I could do a horror, but I'd have to think of like a good universe that would actually match. So what I'll do is I'll do Game of Thrones, and if there's a universe you want me to dig into, throw it down in the comments. Okay, so we'll do Marvel because Marvel's a little bigger. So most of you are probably going to be more familiar with Marvel. So when we're thinking about the Marvel universe, of course, every story, every superhero story has its own world, and they're in their own world in the greater scheme, the greater scope of the Marvel universe. But we want to pull back for a second and we want to look at the overall universe. What is unique about the Marvel universe? How do we know when we're watching a Marvel movie or Marvel film and we're assuming that it's staying true to what they've set up previously, that we are in the Marvel universe and that we're not in like the DC universe or we're not in another superhero universe? What's unique about it? Right? So we have the common trend of superheroes that are Alan, that's actually a really good call. Robert Jordan is the world building master. I would completely agree with you 100%. Wheel of Time is one of my favorite fantasy stories. Absolutely. I think the show has done its own take on it, which is fine. It's doing its own retelling, but the Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time is probably one of the best examples actually of character development. I would say his overall universe is really interesting, but I think the reason Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time is so successful is because he was a master at developing unique characters. By the time we get to book 13, 14, 15, however many there are again, he's developed well over 100 characters that each of them feel unique on different levels, different scapes. So I would absolutely agree with that. Maybe I'll hop into Wheel of Time on a Friday when I hop into our character development. Yeah, because Wednesdays are world building Wednesdays, and then Fridays are character development because I love the Wheel of Time. Absolutely. So let me see. Marvel Universe. So what is unique to the Marvel Universe? Superheroes that are fighting for they're either fighting for themselves, right? We have the superheroes who are more selfish, or fighting to protect, or fighting to protect the innocent. That's a consistent theme that we generally see time and time again, right? Through all these superhero movies, right? The easier superhero movies, like we'll go like Iron Man, is fighting to protect the innocent, but it's a battle within himself. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, fighting to protect the innocent. Let me think. The Hulk, fighting to protect himself, right? Because of his ability. Thor, fighting to protect the innocent. Let me think of other heroes. My favorite of the Marvel characters is Doctor Strange. His original movie is actually fighting to protect himself, but then his later works is fighting to protect the innocent. So that is a contrasting theme that I see time and time again. So let's put this under a theme, or yeah, because it's not competing beliefs. So I would say theme or belief belief system. Superheroes that are fighting for themselves or fighting to protect the innocent. So that is one. And I'll give that a little space just so it's not quite so close together. Perfect. Let's see. I got Dune, Marvel, Star Wars. And I'm going to just bring this down to make it a little easier for all y'all to see. All right, there we go. All right, so I got to the Marvel Universe, and I will come back to Game of Thrones. Okay, so we got superheroes that are fighting for themselves or fighting to protect the innocent. All right, what are other things that make us know we are in the Marvel Universe? One of the most popular things that they've done as of recent. Let's see, Marvel, Mommy Tell. That's a great shout out. Marvel dual identities, right? That's actually a very common theme. Dual identities. I would say Moon Knight was a good example of dual identities. Hulk is a great example of dual identities. Let me think of some of the ones. Let me think of let me think of the most recent Marvel heroes. Most recent Marvel heroes. Let's see. We had actually in the cinematic universe. Okay, so as I think about some of our more popular ones, ones that have good dual identities, Deadpool. As we're all looking forward, right, to Deadpool and X-Men and Wolverine, this is actually a really good one. Dual identities. And this is probably one that y'all would probably love to hear about. So, Mommy Telly, thanks for sharing that. A very popular one, I'm going to put Deadpool, because who isn't excited about Deadpool and Wolverine and their duo movie? And hopefully it's good, right? It looks funny so far. So Deadpool is probably the most extreme version of a dual identity character, right? But his other his hero side, the dual identity version of him, is able to break the fourth wall and talk with the audience. So what better way to bring the audience in with us, right? Hence one of the reasons we love Deadpool, right? Beyond that, he has a tortured past. And that's actually a good tortured past. It's actually more of a character development. Let's see. Wolverine. Does Wolverine have a dual identity? No, Wolverine's definitely the same. Wolverine is more an example of fighting to protect others generally. Some of his movies, he goes more into himself, like Logan, but Wolverine is generally fighting to protect others. Let's see. Loki deals with identity, but not dual. Loki does deal with identity. So like Loki's a great example. I haven't seen the newest season of Loki. It's been on my to-do list, but his shows were pretty interesting. Loki is, let me think, because Loki's set up as an antagonist originally, right? As in the first Marvels, he grows, does his whole multiverse thing, and then his story is protecting others because he has the same power regardless. So he's definitely a single identity. It's interesting because his story once again starts off protecting himself. His story, his most recent story, is, I'm assuming that Loki season 2 follows the same trend, is protecting others, right? Essentially, since he has to protect, works for an agency that protects the multiverse, right? Dual identities. Let's see. Spider-Man and Iron Man. Yep, Iron Man is another good dual identity one. Absolutely. So we have we'll go single identities and dual identities, right? Dual identities. I'm just going to put Deadpool down here because he's a favorite one. Deadpool, single identities. Dual, we would put Spider-Man, Iron Man, single identities, Loki. And of course, there are like, we know there's so many Marvel heroes by this point, right? Dual identities, I would say Wolverine. Wolverine, I think I would probably argue as a single identity one, even though he has the superhero look. I would say Wolverine is a single identity. Hence why they're doing a mashup with Wolverine and Deadpool, because they're two different identities that are interacting with each other. Let me think. Thor is a single identity. Absolutely. Let me think of other ones. Ant-Man, dual identity. Let's see. My favorite Doctor Strange is a single identity. Doctor Strange, and so on and so forth, right? We could keep going on this list forever, but it goes to show, right, the type of identities, because Marvel likes to have these types of identities then go through this underlying theme or belief system, right? While choosing the specific character for the identity is more character development focused. Once they have a character who they're like, all right, they're either going to be a dual identity or they're going to be a single identity. Their journey is going to resonate with, are they fighting for themselves or are they fighting to protect others? Because that's going to align with the belief system. Let's see. Protecting others is something Loki does, but I would say his story asked the question, who is he? Miles Morales' first movie, same thing. The story is, who is he? Yeah, and that's actually a really common superhero thing. That's actually just a very common character thing in general, right? I would argue that the who am I debate is more common to character development and a little less common to Marvel, because you'll see the same thing in DC movies. You'll see the same thing in fantasy, sci-fi, right? We think of Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. Who am I? Right? We think of the main character from Dune. Who am I once his family's killed off, right? It's that same type of inner struggle, but it's a deep human level, something that we all easily relate with. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's see. Something that I would love to highlight with Marvel, something that is unique to Marvel, and sometimes this is unique to this genre tends to be a little more used in war universes, in end of the world movies, sometimes in fantasy and sci-fi, but where we have a single events that shape the course of the entire world, right? This is a very popular one. And when we think about single events, now, of course, if you're familiar with Marvel, like lore through the comics, there's quite a lot. There's so many different characters. That's would obviously be the truth when you've been printing Marvel comics for as long as you have. But when we're thinking about the cinematic universe and we think about one of the biggest defining events, the blip, right? I'm just going to say the blip, which is unique to the Marvel universe, right? After the after Marvel Infinity War series or movies, the blip, thinking about an event and how it can affect the entire universe is huge. A lot of the times in fantasy stories, usually an event tends to be like a war. We usually get to reference wars. Great example. I know, Alan, you mentioned earlier Wheel of Time. A great event from Wheel of Time was the War of Power, where when there used to be male Aes Sedai and before the breaking and all that, right? The breaking itself was another event. How we think of events that affect and shape the nature of the world. Sometimes the events happen prior to the world. Sometimes the story itself is about how the event's going to, how it's leading up to an event and how it's going to take place, right? So I think when we think of timelines, I'm going to actually put this under its own timeline category. Single events that shape the course of the entire world. The blip. Because timelines are so important, right? We need to know where your character is entering the story, at what point in an overall timeline of a greater world. Timelines are essential to world building. Let's see, what else? When we think of Marvel Universe, what else is unique? I mean, you could argue that the powers, but when we think about powers and we think about specifically superhero powers, how are Marvel abilities generally a little different than something like DC's abilities? Marvel tends to use their abilities to mirror the character's journey and belief system. Their ability is usually a reflection of their belief. It's almost always a reflection of their belief, right? Iron Man's a great example. His iron suit is him and technology, his belief as a technology tycoon originally, and basically building out anything that's possible. When we think of Spider-Man and the webs, right? He's shooting webs because he needs to help everybody because webs can catch everything. Webs are sticky. Webs can also be traps, right? If you're catching everyone, then you can trap people in a web. Webs, their abilities tend to be an extension of their belief system. DC sometimes does this depending on which movie and which hero. A lot more times DC's abilities tend to be more on the physical side, more for the physical entertainment. Like when we think of like Batman, right? Batman's abilities, right? He has all these fun toys and fun technology to go beat people up because he's rich. Superman, right? He can fly through the air and he can super strength and he can do all these things because he's Superman, right? And it's much more of a visual, a little less of an inner thematic journey. So abilities, the way that abilities are portrayed is unique to Marvel's universe. Let's see what else. So we have belief systems. We've really dug into the belief systems. We have timelines, which is a huge part of the universe. Let's see. We have abilities. What else is unique to the Marvel universe? I mean, I would say organizations. When we think about organizations, what are the unique cultures? I'm gonna say organizations, right? We have the Avengers. Now, organizations is actually something that's more common to the superhero franchise, right? Just as abilities and superpowers are common, it's the types of organizations, right? So we have the Avengers, we have what's that? Justice League is another one. Justice League. No, wait, not Justice League. I'm blanking. Not Justice League. Fantastic Four. I'm like, not Justice League. Fantastic Four. I'm like, no, I'm tripping. We have Fantastic Four. We definitely have some other ones that I'm just blanking on right now. I know there's quite a number of organizations. Let me think. We know Marvel through each of these types of organizations, and we know that these organizations shift over time. They're not about the specific heroes in them. They're about what the organization stands for. So organizations are about what do they stand for, right? Avengers, what do the Avengers stand for? Will the Avengers always be the Avengers without Iron Man, the Hulk, Hawkeye, and the other ones? Yes, I mean, some might argue from a cinematic perspective, maybe the original Avengers will always be their favorite ones, but the Avengers will always stand for superheroes coming together, combining their powers to defeat universal type threats, right? Uniting to stop universe level threats. Once again, right, why the next time we'll be seeing the Avengers is in the King movies. I think we'll also have them in the Secret Wars, which is penned, because the Avengers, whichever Avengers are alive and whichever Avengers Marvel is going to be using, will have to come together to stop the universal threat, which is the not the potential destruction of the multiverse, right? So we're currently in the multiverse saga, right? So that's the Avengers. Yeah. So I would say these are a couple of good ones. Hey, what's up, Orpha? Welcome to the stream, my friend. We're actually just chatting about world building and some different world building themes right now. So I wanted to just touch on each of those world building themes. Now, what is the same with each of these universes? When I think of the Dune universe, the Star Wars universe, the Marvel universe, right? Completely different genres. But the one thing that they use, one thing that is the absolute same that each of them use, is they rely on real world technology, ideas, historical settings to tell and develop their universe, right? Dune relies on this the bloodline, so a royal bloodline through a nomadic people that have to combine together to competing belief systems. Star Wars, Jedi versus Sith, good versus evil. Gaining power to work with the world around you as compared to gaining power to take for yourself comes from real world belief systems. The Marvel universe, right? Abilities, right, that are an extension of individual people who are fighting for themselves or for others, right? The abilities are just exaggerated, right? Versions of their belief system that comes from inner turmoils and inner struggles that we all deal with. And what I want you to take away with you, right? If there's one thing that I want you to take away, it's when you're working on building your world, think of all the cool things, right? So, like, imagine, have fun with it. My motto is make it easy and make it fun, right? If you make the process easy and you make it fun, then when you're feeling that burnout, when you're feeling that writer's block, you're going to be able to focus on the part that you're passionate about. And that way it'll minimize the chance of you stopping, right? And then making excuses to yourself. So when you're creating your universe or your world, create all the fun things, of course. And then when you're developing them, you can make them more believable by researching real world examples of things that have actually done or things that have actually worked or maybe not worked. And then you can layer them on, right? So you layer a fantasy world, but then there's a lot of things underneath that are things that have probably happened, right? And we see that time and time again in fantasy, sci-fi, and fictitious movies. And I think that's always a great thing if you're ever stuck in world building and you're like, you know what, this belief system, I had this, let's say we had this like a political group between two different groups and it doesn't feel real. Go through history, pick a time period that you really like, something that interests you, or something from current day, right? Copy that belief system, copy the system, and then you adjust and you make the changes to adapt to your story until it becomes your own belief system, right? So that's always my recommendation when researching and developing your world. And by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, don't forget to follow and subscribe. I actually do daily live streams every single day. Monday through Friday is our Kauffman Writes, the chill workshops, writers group for you to come and learn about different elements of storytelling. And then Saturday is the story and critique show where writers from the community submit stories. I do free readings and free critiques. So Saturdays are fun. That's the most popular show. And then Sunday is the Creative Right Now podcast, where I bring on industry professionals, published authors, and writers, and I interview them. So that way you can learn from other writers beyond myself. It's a very fun experience. This Sunday's podcast is going to be revolving around how to channel your inner writer. So if you're subscribed, you will be alerted when I go live and when new videos and shorts drop. Thank you, my friends. So that's what I got right now for world building. I really appreciate you for dropping by. We're actually going to hop into our daily writing sprint next. But if you're really enjoying these workshops and you're like, you know what, I want to learn a little bit more. This was actually workshop 4 out of a 4-part series. Go check out the workshop description. It's down in the video description. And it has the previous workshops of world building. Every Wednesday is World Building Wednesdays. So come back next Wednesday and we'll talk about more world building. If you love characters, as I love character development, I love character development. Fridays are character fiction Fridays. So come back on Friday and we'll talk about characters. All right, so time for a writing sprint. I'm going to work on my story, Last Scarecrow. Let's say it's been like a super busy day, super busy week. You can feel free to sit back and chill, and I'll write vicariously for the both of us. Or maybe you're feeling a little inspired and maybe you want to like brainstorm or write or edit. You can join me in the writing sprint. Let's see, it's 47. So I think I'm going to do a 25-minute sprint today. Let's do 25 minutes. As I work on Last Scarecrow, I'm going to throw up some music and you can join. Excellent. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, and let me adjust my screen real fast so I can pull up my story. There we go. There's our Last Scarecrow. Perfect, and we're at 25 minutes. So, all right, let's get into it. I'm stoked. Okay, and then let's see where. Oh, that's right. I'm at a really intense part in the story right now, right? My hero just got dropped in a graveyard and he's seeing all the dead characters that he's encountered along the way. So, I mean, we're at what, 72%, 73% through the story. So we're having some fun times. Okay, so I'm all ready. I got 25 minutes on the clock. And it's time to write now. Hey, what's up, Lemon? Welcome, my friend. We're just hopped into my writing sprint. Feel free to join along if you want to get some creativity done. All right, that was good. That was good, good, good. And all right, all right, all right. That is a writing sprint. Wonderful. And I was like, what a good place to end it off on, too. That was like literally perfect. I got through the end of Scarecrow kind of seeing ghosts, right? I touched on some of the predominant characters, the last robot, Cloth, the inanimate doll, and then of course our friend Mr. Crow. R.I.P. R.I.P. Crow. Before Scarecrow and Pebble get to have just a little brief connection moment. And I realized that was actually going to be very important because Pebble, their relationship kind of felt a little like distant, a little fractured since Scarecrow accidentally helped her remember one of the worst moments in her life that she remembers so far. Ah, the plot thickens. And of course, he is ran headlong into by another assailant. If there's one thing about this story that's true, our Scarecrow's not very lucky when it comes to the world. This world does not treat Scarecrow very kindly, that's for certain. The Scarecrow is always being captured, attacked, ran over, and literally all the things. I think it's absolutely hilarious, but it fits. It fits the world and it fits the character's journey. It's just funny. All right. So that was a great writing sprint. I hope you were able to get some good writing stuff in yourself. Excellent. That was definitely some good stuff. So as we're wrapping up this writing sprint, and I'm thinking on tomorrow. So, thank you for joining for today. World Building Wednesdays was so much fun. I love talking about worlds. If you hop into the stream a little late, make sure that you can actually hop to the beginning if you want to check out the whole section that we did on world building. It was actually really cool. We went over some specific examples from Dune, Star Wars, and Marvel. So that was super fun. Also, make sure you check out the other workshop series, which I've linked the playlist down in the description below if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, then go to the Kauffman's Corner YouTube channel and you can check out the links there. So tomorrow, Thursdays is super casual. I haven't really packaged Thursdays around any specific thing. I keep Thursdays for more like general writing questions, tips, advice, and discussion. So feel free to come back tomorrow, same time, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. I will just kind of talk about like random like writing advice, maybe writing like obstacles, whatever you might be struggling with or dealing with in your writing. I'll be happy to chat through them. So, and then more writing sprints, of course, as I'm like so eager to get Scarecrow to the next section of his journey. And let's see, comments. Hey, what's up, Marta? Thanks for dropping by. You're totally all good. I'm actually just wrapping up the stream right now, but thanks for dropping by. And then, as y'all know, like the stream on your way out. I appreciate y'all. If you got any value from today's stream, tap that like button. Let me know that you got value and that you enjoyed it. Help us show the algorithm that we're worth it. You're worth it. And that is all that I got for you today, creative writers. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. As always, stay creative, writers.